I really did not want to buy a PlayStation 5 at launch. I generally don't like going out and getting the latest video game console within the first year or two of its life. I just think it's a good idea to wait until all the bugs and kinks are worked out through firmware updates and whatnot. Also too, the launch lineup, despite a handful of good games, are usually pretty paltry. Wait until the game library builds up so that there's something to actually play when you get around to playing it. But Sony went ahead and showed a new Spider-Man game launching with the system. A follow-up to one of my favorite games of the generation, and it doesn't look like it's going to be appearing on the PlayStation 4, so I'm kind of being forced to upgrade. But enough about me and my first world problems. We're getting a brand new Insomniac-made Spider-Man game, only this time Miles Morales is in the starring role. But will this simple protagonist swap be enough to make the game feel truly new and unique rather than just some reskin? Well, maybe, if they do it right. So I loved 2018's Spider-Man on PS4. I called it the best Spider-Man game ever made back then, and I stand by that statement. It did everything a really good Spider-Man game should do, like have great controls and a really good gameplay style, but in addition to that, its story helped out a lot in making you actually feel like Spider-Man. By focusing on Peter Parker as much as they did the actual title character, players were given a full experience of what it's like to be this particular superhero in a natural way. The parts of the game where you got to play as Peter rather than Spider-Man didn't feel shoehorned in. They felt like an organic part of the process. But now we're getting a direct follow-up to Spider-Man on PS4, but this time around we're not playing as Peter Parker, we're playing as Miles Morales, fresh off of getting his own set of powers in the last game and being trained by Peter to become his own unique Spider-Man. Now, this is by no means the first time Miles Morales has appeared in a video game. He's appeared in a bunch of mobile games that Marvel has put out over the years, and he's even appeared in both LEGO Marvel Superheroes 1 and 2. But in those instances, he was more of a character skin or an unlockable costume for Spider-Man. His biggest video game role to date might have actually been last year's Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3, The Black Order. But that game didn't have him front and center as the star. He was part of an ensemble of a whole bunch of superheroes at your disposal. You didn't have to play as him, and in fact, there were two other Spider people you could have played as, and they all played fairly similar to each other. This time, however, Miles is unambiguously the star of the show. But how do you build a game around this new kind of Spider-Man? What does someone have to do in order to make this Spider-Man experience different from all of the other countless Peter Parker Spider-Man games? Now, if we're being honest, I don't think that Spider-Man Miles Morales is going to be all that different from Spider-Man 2018. This is, after all, a glorified expansion pack. It's going to be a game built on the admittedly very solid bones of the previous one. And not only that, Peter Parker and Miles Morales essentially have the same power set. Wall crawling, web slinging, spider sense, enhanced strength and agility, those all come with being a Spider-Man. So the basic gameplay mechanics should pretty much remain the same. And judging from the trailer we got, yeah, it looks like there's gonna be a lot of that. Web slinging, wall crawling, enhanced agility stuff, so far so good. But then you start to get into the minutia of what makes these characters different, and from there, you can sort of see how to make their games different as well. For one thing, Miles has extra powers that Peter Parker doesn't. He can turn invisible, which will make the stealth sections of this new game radically different from the way they were in the 2018 game. But Miles also has a Venom Strike, which can paralyze his opponents and can even be charged up for a larger blast that can affect large groups of people. This power in particular was highlighted in the trailer in the beginning and then again at the end with a little bit of electricity on the spider logo. So these new powers are probably the easiest way to add some variety to your new game and probably the quickest way to differentiate it from your last game. But not only that, these new powers could go a long way to affecting one of the nicest additions to the last game, Spider-Man's use of gadgets. Spider-Man 2018 is really the only Spider-Man game that put any emphasis on Peter Parker's science abilities and his use of gadgets. The gadgets actually went a long way into shaking up the gameplay and enemy encounters, making for a much more robust experience than previous Spider-Man games. Now, Miles Morales, on the other hand, isn't really well known for having a gifted science mind or a genius level intellect like Peter Parker does. He's not an idiot by any stretch of the imagination, he's just not at that level like Peter is. He's more of an average Joe kind of guy in terms of smarts. So the possibility of downplaying the role gadgets have in Spider-Man's use case and focusing more on Miles' own natural abilities would go a long way into making the gameplay feel different for this new, different version of the character. Now, the last game did give Miles some light hacking abilities, and Peter Parker is returning for this game in a mentor role, so it is possible for Peter to give Miles an old spider bomb or two, or maybe even have Miles create his own concoctions for crime fighting. But I think the more they downplay that element for Miles Morales, the better the game will be. If Miles does create his own unique gadgets, then I would suggest maybe having them look a little less refined than Peter's did. Kind of make them look like crap, like they were hobbled together with old calculators and scotch tape. It will go a long way to emphasize that Miles is the everyman Spider-Man, while Peter Parker is more of the smarty pants Spider-Man. And it's right about now, somebody in the comments will write, well, Peter Parker is already the everyman Spider-Man. Peter Parker is sometimes way too smart for his own good. But I think the biggest thing separating Peter Parker from Miles Morales, especially in terms of this game, is experience. Peter Parker has been Spider-Man for many years by this point. He's old hat at this. In the game specifically, it's been said that he's been Spider-Man for about 8 years. Miles, on the other hand, isn't there yet. He just got his powers and really has no idea what he's doing. Sure, he has a mentor, but for the most part, he's on his own. You add on top of that the fact that Miles is feeling the pressure of trying to live up to the legacy of the original Spider-Man and all that entails. It's a fascinating element that I don't really know how you can express via gameplay, but it's definitely something that needs to be expressed via the story. That's part of what made Spider-Verse so good. Side note, I've been seeing a lot of people complain on Twitter that Miles should not be the star of this game because Spider-Man isn't a legacy character. Well, he is now, and no superhero ever starts out with the intention of being a legacy character. They just evolve into one over time depending on how that particular writer or artist wants to take their story. It took over 40 years for Robin to become a legacy character. It took 50 for Spider-Man to be one. The only superhero I can think of that was designed to be a legacy character from the beginning was the Phantom, and even then, writers just used the Kit Walker version of the character. But I don't think anyone really cares about the Phantom in 2020. Anyway, sorry to get sidetracked. Another thing that needs to be addressed with this game now that Miles Morales is the star is his rogues gallery, or rather, his lack of one. Miles Morales just doesn't have the same kind of iconic villains lineup that Peter Parker has. Even Into the Spider-Verse just pretty much used regular Peter Parker villains as the main antagonists. Really, the only villain that Miles Morales has to truly call his own is the Prowler, and even then, it's only when his uncle is using the name the Prowler. But is one villain enough to build a whole open world game out of? The best Spider-Man villains all have some sort of personal connection to the main hero, so using the Prowler for Miles Morales could work in the game, much like how Doc Ock and Mr. Negative worked in the last Spider-Man game. They all have personal connections to the main heroes. And if this new game is supposed to be a shorter experience than the last one, then focusing on one main antagonist should work just fine. You can have other villains sprinkled around the game world for side missions and stuff, but focusing on just one villain as the big final boss, that should work. If they want to add another villain, however, as a main antagonist and make the game longer, then they would have to do some significant retooling of a pre-existing Spider-Man villain. Like maybe develop a story where Norman Osborn has a new relationship with Miles Morales, kind of like he had with Peter Parker, or hell, maybe just rewrite Mysterio to be a purely Miles Morales villain. That would be really cool to see. Also, and this has less to do with Miles Morales specifically, but those stealth sections from the last Spider-Man game where you don't play as Spider-Man, don't put them in this game. We don't play Spider-Man games to play as Mary Jane walking around in a museum trying to not get shot, or a pre-powers Miles Morales hacking drones with his cell phone. We play Spider-Man games to play as Spider-Man. So just don't include anyone else as playable characters. Overall, I'm sure Spider-Man Miles Morales is gonna be a fantastic time regardless of length or changes to gameplay or anything like that. The 2018 Spider-Man game was fun throughout, and it's something that you can easily play for hours and hours and not get bored. I myself have revisited the game several times just because it's so fun to play. And now all of a sudden here comes the opportunity to revisit this gameplay style and this game world from a fresh perspective. I'm all for that. I just think that these ideas of mine could push the game over the edge into feeling like a brand new experience while still feeling unquestionably Spider-Man. I mean, this stuff isn't even rocket science or all that out of the blue. This is stuff that we've seen in other incarnations of the Miles Morales Spider-Man. And the people at Insomniac seem to have a good grasp on what makes Peter Parker tick, so I'm pretty confident that they'll be able to crack the Miles Morales code and give us a truly great Miles Morales Spider-Man video game. Unless, of course, they do something completely weird, like turn Miles into the Punisher at the end, but I doubt they'll do that. They might, but I doubt it. But they might. But what do you think about Spider-Man Miles Morales? Are you excited for the game? Did this sell you on buying a PlayStation 5? Are you holding out for the next true sequel to 2018 Spider-Man game? Let me know down below or anywhere on the internet. I do think it's unfortunate that this is more of a glorified expansion pack and not a true sequel. I guess 2 years of development time isn't really enough to do that. But Sony have been doing this a lot lately. We've had Uncharted Lost Legacy and Infamous First Light, I think it was called, which were basically just add-ons to the main games that you had to pay a little extra for, and you didn't need the main games to play. So I think it's fine that they're doing it with Spider-Man. I just hope this means that the next true Spider-Man game really goes all out. If you want to know more about Miles Morales before this game comes out, you've already seen Into the Spider-Verse like 1,000 times, check out the Amazon affiliate links in the description below to some Miles Morales comics to get you introduced to the character from the ground floor. And maybe you'll come across a villain that is truly iconic to this version of Spider-Man who should be put in the game. I know that this is a me problem, not really thinking that Miles has any iconic villains, but I mean, come on. Peter's villains are just so good. And of course, don't forget that we have new videos on this channel every single Tuesday and Wednesday, with Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern being Wulff Den Live. So subscribe to see all of that, like this video, and share it with a friend who really can't see what the difference is between Miles Morales' Spider-Man and Peter Parker's Spider-Man. There is a difference. It just might be hard to see behind blind loyalty to the original Stan Lee, Steve Ditko creation. Thank you all for watching. I will see you next time.